Welcome back to Grimverse History, where we uncover the strange and forgotten sides of history. Tonight, we walk through cities Rome has just conquered. We follow 25,000 women into organized silence. In just 6 days, Rome processed 50,000 people. Half of them were women, entered into ledgers. Each woman received a number, a category, and a price. Not as prisoners of war, but future assets. Rome called it conquest. The system called it inventory management. You stand in a city square after resistance collapses. Smoke still drifts between stone buildings. Soldiers move calmly, carrying tablets and instructions. You notice how no one asks names anymore. You realize survival now depends on classification. If stories like this matter to you, take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps Grimverse History keep difficult truths visible. And wherever you are watching from tonight, this city has already been counted. Now, dim the lights and let the room quiet. Listen to sandals against stone streets. Hear wax tablets scratched with unfamiliar numbers. Feel order replacing chaos, methodically, without emotion. This is how empires breathe after conquest. It is the morning after Carthage falls. The year is 146 before the Common Era. Roman officers call this moment the harvest. And you are standing inside the system.
The night begins inside a familiar room. Alisa knows the floorboards by memory. This house once held weddings and ordinary mornings. Now footsteps arrive without raised voices. You hear wood split, not arguments. 3 soldiers enter and do not hurry. They move like men following practice steps. One checks rooms while another grips an arm. The third listens, then finds the cellar procedure, replaces shouting, and shouting becomes unnecessary. You stand nearby, unable to intervene properly. Alisa hears her son call her name. Sound travels faster than courage in enclosed spaces. After that sound, silence settles quickly. No one explains what just changed. Explanation would only slow the process. Faces remain familiar. Names already feel temporary. Women stand together without touching. Touch might suggest permission to feel. Feeling is not scheduled right now. An officer walks the line with a tablet. Wax waits patiently for marks. Hands lift chins, check teeth, press shoulders. Measurements replace questions, and numbers replace names. Vintrain works best without conversation. You notice how no one asks her name. Alisa still believes the worst has passed. Cities fall, then life continues, she thinks. Hope often survives one step too long. Hope has not read Roman manuals. Hope rarely reads manuals at all. This capture is not a sudden collapse. It is practiced, quiet, and thoroughly organized. Silence here signals experience, not mercy. Men do not improvise what they have perfected. Improvisation belongs to amateurs and mistakes. You feel the temperature of order settle. A name exists only until paperwork begins. Alisa becomes a mark, then a number. Numbers travel farther than names ever could. Numbers do not cry or remember birthdays. The street smells like smoke and wet stone. That smell will follow her briefly. Later, other smells will replace it. Memory selects what it can carry. The mind travels lighter than the body. You watch her look for something recognizable. Nothing responds to her search anymore. The city remains standing, but belonging leaves. War does not always destroy buildings first. Sometimes it reorganizes people instead. Reorganization sounds harmless, almost helpful. A soldier ties wrists without tightening unnecessarily. Ephisti avoids wasting energy on cruelty. Cruelty costs time when systems run smoothly. The rope burns slightly, then numbs. The body adapts faster than belief. You realize this moment will not be recorded fully. Official records will list quantities and outcomes. They will note compliance and successful processing. They will avoid describing this exact square. History prefers totals over thresholds. Thresholds feel uncomfortably personal. Alisa steps forward when directed. She still recognizes her own feet. Soon, even that recognition will change identity, loosens before it disappears. Completely, loss arrives in manageable increments. Not with rage, but with routine. Not with chaos, but with calm scheduling. A family becomes a case example. A woman becomes an entry awaiting transfer. A life becomes portable property. You learn something human survives briefly here. It survives as attention to small details. Breathing remains slow when panic would help nobody. Standing upright delays collapse slightly. Witnessing preserves dignity longer than resistance. Sometimes endurance looks like compliance. The line advances one measured step. Morning arrives after conquest with surprising calm. Smoke thins and footsteps organize themselves. You expect chaos, but order takes its place. Scrolls open where fires recently burned. Rome prefers paperwork, while cities still breathe. The name sounds gentle enough for agriculture. Harvest suggests patience, timing, and careful hands. Yet this is how the work proceeds. You hear scribes scratching wax deliberately. Officers move through squares with practiced distance. They carry lists, not weapons raised. Instructions arrive folded, already agreed upon. Questions slow operations, so questions disappear. The city becomes a series of stations. You stand close enough to notice patterns forming. Men are separated first, efficiently and quietly. Age matters more than allegiance at this stage. Those past 12 are counted, then removed. Experience taught Roman convenient lessons earlier. Rebellion grows where memory remains active. This solution avoids future complications. No shouting follows these decisions. Silence keeps the process clean. Groups move away without ceremonies. Absence becomes measurable almost immediately. Then, attention shifts carefully toward the women. They are asked to wait longer. Waiting implies usefulness, not mercy. You sense evaluation, replacing urgency. Officers observe posture, strength, potential, endurance. Youth receives additional scrutiny without explanation. Quality replaces character as a defining trait. Numbers settle arguments before they begin. Economies favor clarity over empathy. You notice how patience becomes mandatory. Time stretches while assessments continue methodically. Sunlight moves across stones without interruption. This system does not feel improvised. It reflects centuries of repeated success. Rome learned which bodies lasted longer. Rome learned which investments return value. Empires study patterns more carefully than people. You realize this moment outlives the battle. Conquest ends when fighting stops. Pruning begins when fighting ends. This distinction explains much about Rome. Administration creates profit without urgency. The word harvest fits better than expected. Crops are not asked their opinions. Crops are selected, gathered, distributed accordingly. The field remembers nothing after collection. Memory complicates yield projection unnecessarily. Rome removes complications. Wherever possible, you feel the temperature drop slightly. The air smells of dust and ink. Ink lasts longer than smoke ever does. Records will survive this square intact. Names will not accompany them. Names slow down accounting. Something human still flickers quietly. It survives in shared glances during waiting. It survives through remembering faces beside you. It survives by noticing who disappears first. Witnessing preserves meaning briefly. Attention becomes a quiet act of care. This is the value left to carry. The ships wait patiently beyond the harbor mouth. They rock gently, as if practicing calm already. You smell tar, rope, and something quietly human. These vessels were not borrowed from merchants. They were designed with bodies in mind. Ventilation shafts cut carefully into wooden holes. Drainage channels slope where discomfort accumulates. Water storage calculates survival, not comfort. Architecture learns quickly when profit depends on breathing. The ship becomes a moving equation. You step aboard and feel space tighten immediately. Women are guided below without raised voices. Guidance feels polite when resistance seems impractical. Wooden planks absorb footsteps without complaint. You notice how light thins downward. Darkness teaches cooperation, faster than instruction. Water arrives once, sometimes twice, never enough. Bread is distributed carefully, encouraging impatience. Hunger creates competition better than guards. Competition prevents conversations from forming. Isolation works efficiently when engineered. You watch how people stop sharing naturally. Design accomplishes what force would complication. Anger disperses into personal calculation. Collective thought dissolves this process. Time handles most resistance eventually. Mortality becomes a tolerable variable here. 1 in 7 does not arrive alive. That figure appears acceptable on wax tablets. Loss aligns neatly with expected margins. Bodies are removed quietly when necessary. Accounting prefers clean columns over explanation. Names fade faster than physical strength. Memory becomes inconvenient during transport. Forgetting reduces weight, no ledger records. The mind adapts where it must. Land finally appears as a change in smell. The port announces itself with noise and oil. Ostia breathes commerce without hesitation. Here, pretno, skin, not experience. Oil adds shine where exhaustion remains visible. You stand near the edge, observing preparation. Clothing disappears into controlled flames. New tunics simplify identification efficiently. Hair is arranged to appear cooperative. Food arrives strategically, improving first impressions. Renaissance. Buyers look upward, evaluating without eye contact. Descriptions replace introductions entirely. Age, strength, potential receive immediate attention. Language performs separation with practiced indifference. Ownership changes faster than breathing. Stabilizes. Receipts confirm transactions without hesitation. You notice how silence returns afterward. Carts roll away without ceremony. New names appear. Older ones retire quietly. Identity adjusts to assigned vocabulary. Adjustment becomes survival again. Survival remains the only available achievement. Something human persists, despite careful design. It lives in remembering who vanishes. It lives in noting attention briefly. Witnessing keeps meaning alive momentarily. That attention still counts as care. After purchase, the work changes quietly. Labor is only the surface requirement. Rome prefers deeper, longer adjustments. You feel the shift before anyone explains. The house sounds different at night now. A name disappears first, efficiently and politely. New syllables arrive, shorter, easier to command. You practice them because correction repeats. Old names feel heavier each time remembered. Memory begins negotiating its own silence. Language follows the name into storage. Words once used daily become discouraged sounds. You learn replacement phrases through repetition. Speech narrows until obedience fits comfortably. Communication becomes simpler, less dangerous. Religion leaves without dramatic confrontation. Belief adjusts when consequences feel immediate. You notice how days lose familiar markers. Family references become inconvenient topics. Questions about origin receive measured discouragement. Stories end early when listeners stop listening. Silence grows where sharing once lived. The past learns to wait indefinitely. Rome does not hurry this process. Buildings appear clean, organized, quietly. Functional rooms feel purposefully small, acoustically controlled. Schedules replace conversation. Entirely compliant becomes the primary measurable outcome. You stand outside and feel the air cool. Time passes differently inside those walls. Bodies are maintained, routine repeated. Kesanen. The goal avoids spectacle deliberately. Killing ends productivity abruptly. Erasing extends usefulness indefinitely. Empty tools require less supervision. Forgotten people ask fewer questions. Rome favors outcomes that last longer. You watch adjustment happen gradually. Residing happens without visible force. Tinning hams, then languages soften. Beliefs retreat, then memories blur. Eventually, ep replaces memory. The mind protects itself pragmatically. It stores fragments without context. Faces remain, but names escape. Feelings persist, origins dissolve. Survival negotiates terms silently. Staying functional becomes its own reward. Children born here inherit simple life beginnings. They receive approved names immediately. They learn approved words first. History narrows before curiosity develops. Continuity dissolves without obvious trauma. You realize the system plans generations ahead. This strategy feels calm rather than cruel. Calm makes cruelty harder to recognize. Administration replaces visible violence entirely. Paperwork completes what swords began earlier. Order finishes tasks chaos started imperfectly. Something human still resists quietly. It resists by remembering faces privately. It resists through kindness without explanation. Small recognitions preserve internal space. Briefly witnessing keeps fragments intact longer. You feel that resistance breathing beside you. Rome never fully removes this remainder. It merely reduces its influence gradually. The remainder becomes harder to locate, harder to measure, but still presence refuses completely consistently. The economy settles into place quietly over time. You hear it in markets before battles begin. Fields expect hands, mines expect endurance, roads expect bodies. Rome plans growth the way others plan harvest. Expansion feels necessary rather than optional. You notice how numbers replace explanations. Between a quarter and 2/5 lived enslaved. This ratio feels abstract until you picture streets. Every household depends on unseen labor routine. Comfort becomes normal when suffering feels distant. Distant protects conscience efficiently. War supplies what accounting demands. Conquest refreshes labor pools predictably. Each campaign replenishes what time depletes. Pride becomes a structural requirement. Praise interrupts supply more than violence does. You realize why wars rarely pause long when borders slow. Tension appears elsewhere. Prices rise quietly, then noticeably. Fields thin, mines empty, projects stall. Hunger reaches soldiers before politicians notice. Stuli depends on constant replenishment. The system learns dependency without admitting. It just calls necessity by a respectable name. Rome calls conquest security, order, and destiny. The economy calls it survival. Wolf avoid moral vocabulary intentionally. You feel the weight of repetition. Community beyond Rome adapt defensively. Cities redesign homes with hidden exits. Families plan escape routes without discussing detail. Marriage arrives earlier, sometimes strategically. Pregnancy becomes accidental camouflage. Others refuse the system entirely. Fire feels faster than administration. To some, death remains the last unregulated option. You understand why stories circulate ahead of legions. Fear spreads faster than armies. Rumors travel through kitchens and wells. Mothers whisper warnings during ordinary chores. Rome notices these adjustments without concern. The machine does not question reactions. It measures outputs, not emotional residue. Trauma registers nowhere officially. Silence appears as compliance. In reports, efficiency improves when suffering remains uncounted. You stand among monuments built from this silence. Roads stretch smoothly across former resistance. Aqueducts carry water without memory. Engineering hides cost better than ruins ever could. Beauty distracts from arithmetic successfully. Glory feels quieter when examined closely. It rests on missing voices and reordered lives. It depends on women like Alice disappearing neatly. Her absence supports visible achievement sources. Founty praise outcomes, not input sources. Founcing human persists despite careful erasure. It persists in remembering individual names privately. It persists when you notice who remains uncounted. It persists through quiet refusal to forget. Attention becomes a small act of resistance. Memory interrupts addiction momentarily. That interruption still matters. The noise fades before the memory does. Breathing slows, and the room grows patient. The journey loosens its grip gently. You still hear sandals against ancient stone. Wax tablets scratch softly in the distance. Smoke lingers where cities once held voices. Somewhere a harbor creaks with tired ships. Rope rubs wood in a familiar rhythm. Oil reflects lamplight without emotion. Now the scene begins to dim. The past steps backward. One careful pace, like a door closing without a click. You return to this moment quietly. The air feels warmer, more forgiving. Your body remembers the present easily. History rests best when handled gently. Not erased, not shouted, simply held, like a story folded and placed nearby. If this journey stayed with you tonight, you can leave a small sign behind. A like, a share, a soft subscription helps. It keeps these quiet stories breathing longer. Thank you for spending this time with Grimverse History, for listening without rushing the silence, for allowing memory to remain human. We close the archive carefully now. The lamps lower, and the night steadies. Sleep comes easier after honest listening. Goodbye, and we will meet again.